My name is Valentina. I'm 33 years old and a neurology resident at a major hospital in Philadelphia. That morning, I opened an email from HR like I always did and saw a name that made my heart stop. Madison Carter, my younger sister. The same sister who was nowhere to be found during the 8-hour emergency surgery that nearly left me paralyzed 6 years ago. The same sister our parents went to support at her graduation while I lay alone on an operating table, unsure if I'd ever walk again. Now Madison was applying for a job right where I worked. Same building, same hallway beneath the same white fluorescent ceiling. Have you ever been abandoned by your family at the exact moment you needed them most? Would you forgive someone if they suddenly returned, smiling as if nothing had ever happened? If this story feels familiar, I invite you to leave a comment below. Like, subscribe, and stay with me to find out what happened when I came face to face with the very person who erased me from the family photo on the day my spine was being held together by surgical screws. I grew up in a quiet suburb north of Atlanta, where rows of moss-covered rooftops lined maple-shaded streets. We lived in a 2-story colonial-style home with a creaky porch swing and a tulip garden my mother adored. From the outside, we looked like the perfect family: an architect father, a stay-at-home mother, and 2 daughters, each with her own charm. But behind those white curtains was a world where I constantly swept up the shattered pieces of expectations placed on someone else. I was 6 when my sister Madison was born. My mother held her like she was a gift from the universe. I stood quietly in the corner, clutching my frayed teddy bear while my aunt whispered, "Valentina will have to learn how to be a big sister." From that moment, I stopped being the child and became the one expected to endure. When I was 8, I had a birthday party planned for weeks, a small celebration at the city park with strawberry cake and 3 close friends from school. I had already picked out a lavender floral dress and decorated our living room with paper balloons. But that morning, Madison had a slight fever, barely 99 degrees. My mother stepped into my room and said gently, "Madison isn't feeling well, sweetie. Let's postpone your party, okay? You're the big sister. Try to understand." No one asked if I was disappointed. No one noticed me staring out the window all afternoon as the balloons I blew up deflated one by one. At 12, I won first place at the state elementary science competition, a contest I had spent weeks preparing for, studying under the covers by flashlight long after the house went to sleep. I was invited to give a speech at the statewide honors assembly, scheduled the same day Madison had her first kindergarten piano recital. My mother chose to go with Madison, so did my father. I accepted my medal on stage in front of strangers, the only familiar face being my science teacher in the front row. After the ceremony, I took the bus home alone. Madison was sitting in Mom's lap, proudly recounting how everyone clapped really loud after she played a piece she missed 3 notes on. Dad asked, "Your event went well too, right?" I nodded. That was the day I learned how to smile through tears. Every time I showed disappointment, my mother gave me the same stern look. "You're the older sister, you have to sacrifice." That phrase was repeated so often, I memorized it like a bedtime prayer. When I needed advanced textbooks, Mom said the budget was going toward Madison's art tutor. When I asked Dad to help with a science project, he said I had to wait because he was building a bookshelf for Madison's room. Everything that mattered to me could wait. Anything related to Madison was a top priority. I didn't hate Madison. Honestly, there were moments I loved her deeply. When she ran into my arms after being teased at school, or handed me a crumpled note that said, "Tina is the best big sister in the world." But that love only made the hurt dig deeper as she grew older and began to believe everything should revolve around her. One time, she broke Mom's phone and I got scolded for not watching her carefully. When she forgot her homework, I stayed up late helping her finish it before class. I wasn't just a daughter. I was her friend, her shield, her fixer. By 9th grade, my guidance counselor told me I had a rare talent for medicine. I became obsessed with anatomy, spent hours with biology books, and made makeshift models out of old newspapers. Meanwhile, Madison danced, painted, tried horseback riding, each hobby lasting a few months before she quit. No matter what I achieved, my parents' response was always, "Good, That's what we expect from you. But when Madison earned a B in English, the whole family went out for dinner to celebrate how hard she worked. I learned to keep quiet. I stopped sharing stories about school. I buried my joys. I became the girl who was always on time, who always finished her homework, who never caused trouble. Madison, on the other hand, was always late, lost her books, cried over bad grades, and always had someone pick her up early and wrap her in a hug. One cold winter night, as I washed dishes with my hands numb from the cold water, Madison ran downstairs shouting she'd been picked to sing a solo in the school talent show. Mom turned to me with a soft voice. "Help her pick out a pretty dress, okay?" I wanted to ask, "Who's going to help me prep for my scholarship exam next week?" But I didn't say it. I already knew the answer. No one forced me to carry the weight. No one asked me to endure. But no one ever asked if I was tired either. In that house, I was the metronome, the one who kept the rhythm so the rest of the bells could chime joyfully. That's how I spent most of my childhood. And I didn't realize those years of being pushed to the edges were building a steely resolve in me, but also leaving behind cracks not easily mended. Madison might not remember the moments I was pushed aside, but I do, vividly. Each memory like a shard of glass, sharp, reflective, and every time I look back, they still cut deep. I remember clearly, it was a rainy afternoon in April. I had just gotten home from school, backpack soaked. Inside was an acceptance letter to the Johns Hopkins Pre-College Medical Summer Program, one of the most prestigious science camps for students pursuing medicine. I had spent a year preparing. Essays, a small research project, perfect transcripts, 3 tough rounds of selection. The day I got in, I nearly cried in front of my locker. I called Mom with shaky excitement. "I got in! I need to submit a $1,200 deposit by the end of the month to hold my spot. Can we talk after dinner?" That night, after dinner, I laid the letter on the coffee table. Madison was painting her toenails, headphones in, legs draped over the couch. I explained the program. Top professors, real labs, surgical models, even a chance to shadow real patients. I just need to pay the $1,200 deposit up front. Most of the rest is covered by scholarship. Could I borrow it from my college savings? Before I finished, Mom set her teacup down and sighed. "That might not be possible, Valentina. We just wired the first tuition payment for Madison's art school in New York. You know the one?" I turned to Madison. She looked up from her phone and shrugged. They needed the payment to secure my spot. I thought, "Mom told you!" I clenched my fists. "That was my entire college savings, Mom." She avoided eye contact. "Valentina, you're smart. You'll get a scholarship. Madison isn't like you. Opportunities like this don't come often for her." I gave a bitter laugh, my voice even. "And my opportunity? Does that matter at all?" Dad looked up from his newspaper. "You should be proud to be the strong one. Think of it as helping your sister." I said nothing more. I knew arguing would only harden their stance. I picked up the letter and walked back to my room. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake, eyes on the ceiling, tracing the pattern of injustice repeating like clockwork. The next morning, I walked to the grocery store 2 blocks away and applied for a weekend shift. I picked up extra hours waiting tables at a cafe near school, working late afternoons Monday through Thursday. I reprinted my acceptance letter and pinned it to my desk as a daily reminder to push harder. After school and work, I had a third job, tutoring Madison. She struggled with math, couldn't remember basic formulas, mixed up active and passive verbs. I didn't blame her. Everyone has weaknesses. But I couldn't understand why I had to give up the most important opportunity of my life and still be the one drilling her on fractions. One time, after finishing my shift at the coffee shop, I got home around 10 p.m. My body ached, my head spinning from the smell of burnt oil and stale espresso. Madison was sitting at the kitchen table, her face scrunched in frustration. "I have a chemistry test tomorrow. I don't get any of it." I poured myself a glass of water, then sat down and opened her notebook. My eyes blurred as I wrote out an acid-base reaction equation. "What are you doing?" Madison asked, her voice sleepy. "Writing the equation," I said, rubbing my temples. But I'm exhausted. Try doing the first one. You do it, please. I can't remember how to write the exponents. I didn't argue. I did it. I explained. I tucked her into bed at 11:30, then stayed up late studying for my anthropology exam the next day. A week later, she got a B+. The whole family opened sparkling apple cider to celebrate. Mom said, "Madison finally passed a tough exam thanks to that hardworking girl." Quietly washed the dishes, listening to their laughter echo from the living room. That night, I didn't cry. There were no tears left, but something inside me shifted, like a door gently closing. Maybe I'd keep living with them, still calling it a family, but I knew that from that moment on, I would start building something of my own, a life where my worth wasn't measured by how much I sacrificed. A life I would carve out, brick by brick, from the rubble of broken trust. I began to feel sharp pain in my lower back during my senior year of college. At first, it was just a twinge when I bent over. Then it turned into a radiating pain, shooting down my legs, dropping me to my knees in the hallway. I told myself it was from bad posture or working too much. But when the pain got so bad I couldn't stand for more than 5 minutes at a time, I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. After months of tests, MRIs, and failed physical therapy, the university hospital's neurologist sat me down. His face was serious in a way that made my stomach twist. "Valentina," he said, "you have a severe herniated disc with spinal cord compression. We're seeing signs of early muscle atrophy in your right leg. You need surgery as soon as possible. If you delay, you may lose your ability to walk permanently." I sat there, frozen, gripping the strap of my bag. My mind went blank. Of all the futures I had imagined, graduating, getting into med school, becoming a doctor, none of them included a wheelchair. The surgery was scheduled for May 22nd. When I saw that date printed on the appointment slip, my heart sank. It was the same day as Madison's college graduation, a day my mother had been counting down to since January. They had booked flights, a hotel, even hired a private photographer. Madison was the first in our family to earn a degree in performing arts in New York. Her graduation would take place in a grand theater with a live orchestra and stage lights. And I would have scalpels, IV drips, and the chance I'd never walk again. I waited until that evening to call. I had rehearsed every sentence, picked gentle words, hoping to soften the news. Mom answered. "Mom, I need to talk for a second," I said, low but clear. "Hang on, sweetie. I'm helping Madison try on her graduation dress. Let me put you on speaker." Laughter rang out through the phone. I hesitated, then continued. "I'm scheduled for spinal surgery on the 22nd. The doctor said if we don't do it soon, I might lose sensation in my right leg permanently." Silence for a few seconds, then Madison's voice came through, firm, without hesitation. "Can't you push it a few days? The 22nd is my graduation." I froze. "Madison," I replied, trying to stay calm. "The doctor said it can't be delayed. This is serious." "So you want the whole family to skip my graduation," she said, her voice rising. "Everyone's been waiting for this. I worked 4 years for this moment. And I'm terrified I might never walk again," I said, my voice quiet but steady as steel. Mom cut in. "Valentina, you're at one of the best hospitals in the country. There'll be nurses and great doctors to take care of you, but Madison only graduates college once." I gripped the phone, my entire body going cold. I hadn't asked for anything in years. Just this once, one time I reached out and still I was turned away. "So, you're not coming?" I asked. Mom sighed. "You're strong, honey. You'll get through it. I'll call right after the ceremony." The call ended. No one asked if I needed someone to take me to the hospital. No one asked who would sign consent forms if something went wrong. I put the phone down, bowed my head, and let the tears fall into my palms. The morning of the surgery, I called a taxi myself. I wore a loose-knit sweater over the thin hospital gown. When the nurse asked who my family contact was, I paused, then shook my head. No one. In the pre-op room, I lay on a cold gurney under fluorescent lights that hurt my eyes. An anesthesiologist came by, placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. Is no one here with you? He asked. I forced a smile. I'll be okay. The surgery lasted nearly 7 hours. According to my medical record, my blood pressure dropped twice, and at one point my heart slowed so much they had to use emergency cardiac meds. The surgeon had to expand the procedure because the disc had ruptured further than expected, and they inserted titanium reinforcement. I woke up in a haze of pain and fluorescent glare. My back felt like it had been torn open. The first sensation was pain. The second, cold. I looked around. The 3 chairs next to my bed were still empty. A nurse walked in, checked my vitals. She looked down at me and gently asked, "Do you have anyone with you?" I shook my head. No one came. She squeezed my hand softly and whispered, "I'll stay with you." After she left, I reached for my phone. No texts from Mom, no missed calls from Dad, but I did see photos of my family beaming on stage with Madison. Mom had written, "The proudest moment of my life. So proud of our little princess." I set the phone down, my pillow soaked with tears. I didn't know if I was crying from the surgery, the missing piece of my spine, or being erased from my own family. Maybe all 3. I closed my eyes and promised myself from now on, I would expect nothing from anyone. I would rise from this hurt, however long it takes, even if I have to walk with legs still trembling from near paralysis. I woke up in the pale fog of anesthesia, throat burning like sandpaper. Beside my bed, the heart monitor beeped steadily, marking the heavy silence in the recovery room. I tried to turn my head, every movement shot lightning through my spine. But what struck me most wasn't the pain. It was the absence. The 3 chairs next to my bed sat untouched. No flowers. No gift bags. No hurried footsteps or worried faces. Just me. The door creaked open, and soft light spilled in with the silhouette of a woman. She wore a light blue scrub top, curls tucked neatly behind her head. Her name tag read simply, Grace. She walked in, gently, checked my IVs and vitals, then looked down at me. "Hi there, I'm the night nurse on duty. My name's Grace. You're awake, huh?" I nodded slightly, every motion making cold sweat break along my spine. Grace handed me a damp gauze to press against my lips. "No family with you?" I tried to smile, but my voice rasped. "No one came." Grace didn't ask anything more, nor did she look at me with pity. She simply placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "It's okay. I'll stay with you." I wasn't used to tenderness that didn't come with conditions. It felt unfamiliar, almost too good to be true. That night, Grace didn't leave my room, even after her shift ended at 11 p.m. She brought a chair from the nurse's station and sat beside my bed, occasionally adjusting my blanket or brushing my hair back when I whimpered in my fitful sleep. When I dreamt I couldn't lift my right leg and woke in the middle of the night from a painful spasm, she was the one who held my hand tight, keeping me from breaking. Early the next morning, still groggy from the pain meds, I saw her return with a breakfast tray. On it was a glass of orange juice, a small bowl of oatmeal, and a tiny folded note shaped like a heart. "A little sugar to start your day," she smiled. "No one should have to face their first morning post-op alone." I couldn't finish the meal, but I remembered that first spoonful, not the taste of oatmeal, but the taste of care. I didn't feel completely invisible. In the days that followed, Grace continued to stop by every afternoon, even though she'd been reassigned to a different shift. She'd sit by my side and read aloud. At first, it was light medical fiction. Then she shifted to short stories about patients and nurses. Her voice was warm and clear, and more than once I found myself drifting off, as if someone from home were reading me bedtime stories again. One day, she brought a small cactus and set it on my windowsill. "Doesn't need much care, but still thrives. Just like you." I stared at it long after she left, a little plant in the middle of that sterile, white room, standing tall as if needing no protection, just like I had always tried to do. But unlike me, it had someone like Grace behind it. On the 3rd evening, I turned on my phone for the first time since the surgery. The screen lit up with notifications. I opened the familiar app and saw the family photo. Everyone smiling brightly on Madison's graduation stage. Mom had written, "The most wonderful day. So proud of our little princess." I scrolled down. The entire album was Madison. Mom in her pale blue floral dress, Dad beaming next to his youngest daughter in her deep red cap and gown. I didn't appear in a single frame. Not a word, not a check-in. While I lay in a hospital bed recovering from a surgery that nearly left me paralyzed, they were clinking champagne glasses under stage lights. I walked my screen. My chest felt heavy, like someone had stacked stones on it. I didn't cry. I just breathed slowly and deeply. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was the truth, final and undeniable. Grace came back just as I was struggling to reach for my water glass. She rushed over and gently held my shoulder. "Don't push yourself. Let me." I looked at her, and maybe something in my eyes said the words I never had the courage to say out loud. She sat at the edge of my bed, still holding the glass to my lips. "I was once a patient too," she said. "When I had my first child, my husband didn't come. Said he was busy with work. I labored alone in that delivery room for 8 hours. No one by my side. I know that feeling." I blinked, swallowing the lump rising in my throat. Grace went on, her voice steady like she was recalling a story she no longer needed to dress up. "After that day, I promised myself if I could stop someone else from feeling that alone, I would." I reached out and gently squeezed her hand. No words, just a grip that said, in that bleach-white world of antiseptic smells and fluorescent lights, I was no longer entirely alone. Even later, when everything had passed, I never forgot those little gestures from Grace. The orange juice, the cactus, her soft laugh whenever I told stories about med school or juggling part-time jobs to cover my tuition. Love doesn't always come labeled family. Sometimes it shows up as quiet actions and timely presence from someone with no blood tie at all. And for me, in that moment, Grace was the only one who called me by name. Not out of duty, but out of simple human care. A name, a hand, a sleepless night at my bedside. That was enough to carry with me for life. 5 years had passed since the day I lay alone in that operating room. 5 years of burying myself in work, finishing my residency with a spine held together by 3 titanium screws. I got to the hospital earlier than most, and left later than even the overnight team. I didn't date. I stopped calling home on Thanksgiving. I turned myself into a part of the hospital, like the old CT machine that still ran because someone remembered to maintain it. I didn't allow myself to feel weak because I knew too well what it cost to expect anything from others. At the time, I was a 4th-year neurology resident at Jefferson University Hospital in Philadelphia. I was assigned to a clinical study on Parkinson's and led the consult team on complex neurological cases. I wasn't the best, but I was persistent, disciplined, and exact. The department nicknamed me the Silent Wall, not one for parties or chatter, but always there when needed. One Tuesday afternoon, while reviewing patient files for the next day's consult round, the admin assistant handed me a thick application packet. "New applicant for the office manager position. Dr. Hargrove asked if you could take a look." I flipped through the packet absent-mindedly until my eyes landed on the first line. Madison Carter. I thought I'd misread it, but no. Every letter, every signature in the recommendation letters cut like a blade across a scar that never fully healed. I reread the opening lines of her personal letter. "I've been deeply inspired by my sister, Dr. Valentina Carter, who works at this hospital. Through her, I've learned persistence, service, and the dream of becoming a part of the healthcare world." I sat still. Madison. The one who didn't show up on the day of my surgery. The one who took my med school summer tuition to enroll in art school. The one raised in praises as the little princess while I lingered like a shadow. She was now painting a perfect version of me, the sister she hadn't called in 5 years to help land a job. I looked through the rest of her file. She'd graduated with a degree in communications after switching from performing arts, recently worked as an admin assistant at a community vaccination center. The resume was well written, her strengths clearly outlined. She knew how to craft a narrative. The letters of recommendation came from two respected individuals. Everything added up. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it was all built on a polished lie. I took the file back to my office and sat still as the evening light filtered through the window. I felt my heart race, not from work pressure, but from something deeper. A tension between who I was and who I used to be. That night, I called Grace. "Do you have a minute?" Moments later, I heard the familiar knock. Grace walked in holding 2 cups of hot ginger tea. I handed her the folder. She skimmed through it, then looked at me. "You okay?" I didn't know how to answer. "Why now?" I asked. "Why, after all these years, does she want to come here? There are hundreds of hospitals, hundreds of admin offices." Grace stayed quiet for a while. Then she asked softly, "What do you want to do?" I looked out the window. The city lights shimmered in the distance. I didn't know. I really didn't know. "You could tell everyone the truth," Grace said. "But what you need to ask is, are you doing it for justice or for a wound that hasn't healed?" I sat there for a long time after Grace left. My mind spun with conflicting memories. Times when Madison hugged me tightly as a child, and times when she coldly pushed me away during that fateful phone call before my surgery. I wasn't afraid to face her, but I wasn't sure I had the patience to stay silent one more time. If that lie stepped into the hallway where I had sweated and shed tears just to survive, could I keep ignoring it? Or would there come a time when I would have to speak the truth myself? I placed the file on the table, flipping back to the last page. Bold, italicized words read, "Available for interview at the request of the hiring committee. Eager to contribute to your esteemed hospital." I closed the file, emotions swirling inside me. Some doors, once opened, cannot be closed. But perhaps it was time I stopped letting others write my life story with pens that never belonged to them. I was sitting in my office writing a case report when the door suddenly opened. Madison walked in without knocking, her lips painted bright red, makeup perfectly done as if she were preparing for a party, not applying for a job in a hospital. She carried an expensive designer handbag, glancing dismissively over my paperwork as if it didn't exist. "You got a minute?" Her voice was soft, but calculating. I looked up. "Madison, you should schedule an appointment with Human Resources first." "No," she interrupted, sitting down in the chair opposite me without waiting for an invitation. "I just want to talk to you, alone." I put my pen down and straightened up. "So, what do you want?" She smiled lightly, tilting her head. "You know, I'm applying for the administrative manager position. It's no big deal. I just need you to say a few nice words at the board meeting this week." I looked directly into her eyes. "Why do you think I would do that?" Madison raised her eyebrows, leaning back slightly. "Because you're the older one, the sister, and because old things should be left behind, right? You're still mad about that back injury? Come on, Valentina, how many years has it been?" A heavy silence pressed down on the room. I said nothing. I stood up and walked to open the door. She still sat there, not understanding my meaning. When I turned back, my voice was calm, almost strangely so. "Go home, Madison, and if the hiring committee needs my comments, they'll ask directly. I won't interfere." She sprang up, eyes wide, each word sharp. "You always think you're so noble, but really, you're selfish. You've never known how to forgive. I'm just asking for one chance, one word, and you can't even give that." At that moment, footsteps softly echoed in the hallway. Grace stood there, holding a medical file, clearly having overheard the conversation. Madison flinched when she saw her. As for me, I didn't say another word. I turned away. Madison left with rapid footsteps. Grace came in, set the file on the table, then sat down beside me. She was silent for a long moment. "You never told them everything, did you?" she asked. I shook my head. "No, they never asked. And I didn't want to say anything more when I knew they didn't really care." Grace nodded softly, her eyes gentling, then slowly stood. I'll talk to them, not to speak for you, but so you don't have to keep living like you almost never survived. I didn't stop her, nor did I dare hope, but deep inside, my heart skipped a different beat. 3 days later, I was called to an emergency internal meeting in the doctor's lounge. Upon entering, I immediately recognized my parents there. Mom wearing her old beige coat she always wore on holidays. Dad sitting beside her, hands clenched on his knees. Madison stood close behind them, her eyes a bit unfocused. Grace sat across the room between the hospital CEO, the HR director, and a legal representative. Before I could say anything, Mom stood and approached me. She reached out as if to hold my hand, but I didn't respond. Valentina, her voice trembling, no longer as confident as usual. I didn't know. We never knew how serious that surgery was. I stood silently. Then Grace gently spoke to everyone. I was the nurse on duty that day. I stayed with Valentina through the entire 8-hour surgery. Her heart slowed twice during the operation. The doctor had to choose between putting in an extra stabilizing frame or letting her risk paralysis from the waist down. The room fell utterly silent. I called the family, Grace continued. No one answered. The next morning, I saw Madison's graduation photos flooding social media. At the time, I thought the family must have had a reason, but over the years, I never saw anyone visit her, ask after her, or even mention that day. So today, I chose to speak out. My mother collapsed into a chair, covering her face and crying. My father turned away, eyes red and swollen. Madison stood still, clutching her bag strap, unable to speak. I didn't cry. I didn't blame. I just sat there, seeing my parents' eyes filled with real regret. But what surprised me was the emptiness inside. No satisfaction, no relief, just the truth, finally revealed, like a door long closed, slammed open by the quiet sound of conscience. Madison was not accepted for the administrative manager position at the hospital. The decision came 3 days after the family meeting. Though her file was complete and her experience suitable, no one denied the tense atmosphere left behind by the confrontation between us. I did not influence that decision. I was only invited to clarify some internal HR matters, but I stayed silent, neither supporting nor opposing. Madison called me a week later. "Can I see you for a bit?" Her voice was softer, less sharp, no longer arrogant. We met at a small cafe near the hospital on a Saturday morning. When I arrived, Madison was already sitting at an outdoor table, holding a cup of peppermint tea, eyes distant. No makeup, hair tied back, her gaze tired. I sat down without saying anything. Madison was silent for a while, then spoke, her voice choked. "I know I don't deserve to ask you for anything more, but I really need a chance. Not here, anywhere else. I don't want to go back to that old cycle." I looked at her for a long moment. Under the soft spring sunlight, her face no longer had the spoiled glow of old days. There was something in her eyes that made me believe she was truly facing herself. I quietly opened my bag, took out a pre-printed letter, and slid it toward her. A recommendation letter for an administrative position in the emergency department at Mercy South Hospital. Not a management role, but a chance to learn, to start over, if you really want it. Madison took the paper, eyes red-rimmed. "Why are you helping me?" I looked down at my hands. "Because someone once stood by me without needing a reason, and because if you truly want to change, I don't want to be the first one to pull you back down." Madison clenched the paper in her hand. A tear fell onto the edge of the table. I didn't comfort her, nor did I hold her hand. We just sat there in silence amid the sounds of traffic and a gentle cold breeze passing through. A month later, I heard that Madison had started her new job. She worked evening shifts, supporting the hospital's admission coordination and medical records team. No more designer bags, no more high heels, just a light blue hospital uniform and a simple plastic name tag. I didn't go to see her, but sometimes colleagues at Mercy would mention she was quiet, hardworking, a bit awkward, but trying very hard. 3 weeks after that, I received an email. No subject, just a simple line. I've started therapy, and for the first time, I understand why you stayed silent all those years. I'm sorry. I didn't reply immediately. I left it there, reading it over several times during stressful night shifts. Not to forgive, but to ask myself if I still hoped for anything. Then I realized I didn't expect her to be the perfect sister. I just hoped I wouldn't have to carry the burden in my heart every time I thought of her. One day in Mid-Apple, while walking from the department to the parking lot, I happened to see Madison from afar. She was pushing an elderly patient in a wheelchair toward an ambulance. Careful movements, focused eyes. She didn't see me, and I didn't stop. But inside me, the feeling of tight anger no longer took hold. Instead, there was a gentle, fragile silence. Not trust, not reconciliation, but a letting go without carrying pain. A small chance, like a sprout just breaking through dry soil. Not sure if it would survive, but at least it had started to grow. I never expected Madison to keep her job at Mercy South for more than 3 months, but she stayed. Didn't quit, didn't call home asking for money, didn't post fake glamorous photos online like before. Those things didn't exactly move me, but they made me silently watch her longer every time I accidentally passed the old hospital hallway. Then one day, while resting in the doctor's lounge after a 16-hour shift, my phone rang. It was Madison. I'm going to therapy regularly. The doctor suggested the whole family join a few sessions if possible. I understand if you don't want to, but I want you to know I'll come. Whatever you choose. I sat there a long time after she hung up. No one in my family had ever mentioned therapy before. In the culture I grew up in, strength always meant endurance, silence, swallowing pain. But maybe it was time to peel off those layers, even if trembling to do so. The following week, we sat together in a small room with warm gray carpet, soft leather chairs, and the gentle scent of lavender from a diffuser in the corner. An abstract painting hung slightly tilted on the wall, as if the room itself was learning balance. I sat on the left, not close to anyone. My father sat next to my mother, their hands intertwined, eyes avoiding mine. Madison looked down at the carpet. Martha, the family therapist, began softly, calmly, without rush. Who would like to start today? No one spoke. Then suddenly my mother took a deep breath, her hands trembling lightly. Valentina, she said, I don't know how to begin, but I think I owe you an apology. I looked up. Her eyes were wet. For so many years, I thought you were strong, that you could manage on your own, that you were the one I didn't need to worry about. So I turned my attention more to your sister. I didn't realize how alone I left you. My father gently held her hand. We made you the most successful one in the family by neglecting you. He hesitated, then continued in a low, deep voice. Every success of yours we took for granted, but every effort of Madison's we celebrated as a miracle. That's our fault. Madison looked up, her lips trembling. I didn't look at her, only down at my tightly clasped hands. I didn't say anything, I spoke, my voice deeper than usual, because I didn't want to beg for anyone's pity, but there were times I wished someone could see what I was going through. The room fell silent. I closed my eyes for a moment, then opened them. I'm not saying this to blame, but I need to say it to lighten my own heart. I've forgiven, but I will not forget. Because forgetting means ignoring what made me who I am today, and I no longer want to be the center for anyone but myself. Madison cried, my mother sobbed, my father squeezed her shoulder quietly. I didn't cry, but I felt the old ache in my chest settle into a corner. It didn't disappear, but it no longer clung to me. I had been silent too long, to the point where I couldn't tell the difference between pain and habit. But this time, speaking out, I didn't feel weak. I only felt alive. We scheduled several more sessions, not to fix anything, but to relearn how to see each other with new eyes. Madison began sharing more about what she learned in individual therapy, that she once thought love was measured by favoritism, that she didn't understand why she always felt the need to grab the spotlight, and that most of that came from how our parents raised her. One session, Madison brought a notebook. Inside were things she wrote daily after work, feelings, things she was grateful for, small moments that made her feel more real. She read a few lines, then looked up at me. "I used to think you were cold, but now I understand. You were just holding yourself together, so you wouldn't break." I said nothing but smiled, not because of forgiveness, but because finally we could speak to each other in a language free of hidden meanings and roles, and that alone was healing. The awards ceremony was held in the Pennsylvania Medical Center auditorium on a sunny June afternoon. Outside, sunlight streamed through the glass dome, shining on the red carpet that stretched along the hall. I walked onto the stage wearing the white lab coat I'd worn for 2 years in neurology, my heart tightening as hundreds of eyes turned to me. They were colleagues, students, patients I'd treated, and some who taught me to believe in kindness again. When the announcer proudly declared me State's Young Physician of the Year, something welled up in my throat. Not because of the gold-plated certificate or the applause lasting over a minute, but because I knew, after so many years struggling, I was finally stepping into the light, no longer a shadow in my own story. I approached the podium, hands on the microphone, scanning the room. I saw Dr. Jules from cardiology nodding and smiling, Dr. Nina from emergency waving softly, and even the dean of my medical school sitting in the front row. Then I saw Madison sitting mid-row, wearing a light blue shirt and simple black slacks. Her gaze was fixed on the stage, neither shy nor avoiding, just quietly calm. I took a deep breath, then began. I used to think success meant hitting milestones, handling difficult cases, and getting research published in medical journals. But then I realized there's something far more important, living authentically as myself. I paused for a moment. In that quiet instant, I looked toward the left side of the room, where Grace was sitting. I want to thank someone not for teaching me medicine, but for teaching me the true meaning of family. Thank you, Grace, the one who stood by me when the whole world turned its back. I saw Madison lower her head, clapping softly, not the kind of formal applause, but just enough, like someone quietly saying in their heart, "She deserves this." After the ceremony, I stepped out onto the outdoor plaza of the conference center. The setting sun cast a warm orange glow through the maple trees, lighting up the horizon in fiery hues. Madison stood there, holding a glass of water. The light streamed through her shoulder, casting a long shadow on the concrete below. I walked up and stood beside her. We didn't look at each other right away. "When did you get here?" I asked. "Before they showed the first slide," she replied, softly, like a breeze. I turned to look at her. "I'm proud of you, proud of what you're doing, but I will never go back to being a shadow again. Not for you, not for anyone." Madison turned to me. I saw in her eyes no longer hope or trying to please someone, just honesty. "I don't need you to be a shadow," Madison said, her gaze steady. "I just want a chance to stand beside you as myself, not anyone else." I was silent. In that windy afternoon air, her words echoed like a gentle wave, touching a long, dry shoreline, not sweeping anything away, just softening the sand. "Good," I answered, eyes on the trees. "If it's as yourself, I won't stop you." Madison nodded, then whispered, "I signed up for a weekend class on trauma recovery psychology. I want to understand more about people like you and like me." I looked back at her, this time with a smile, not a forced or polite one, a nod from deep inside for someone who dared to step past their mask to look at themselves. We stood side by side a while longer, saying nothing, just quietly watching the last rays of daylight fade. And I thought, if there's a place to start over, this is the best place. No illusions, no fighting, no one as the center, no shadows. Just two people standing side by side as themselves. What would you do if one day someone who hurt you came up and said, "I don't need you to be a shadow. I just want to stand beside you as myself"? Would you have the calm to listen, the courage to forgive, and the strength to move forward without losing yourself? I don't have the right answer for everyone, but for me, this journey wasn't about finding a perfect family again. It was about finding myself amid cracks long forgotten. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but it lets me move on without carrying the weight. What about you? Have you ever felt abandoned by your family? Chosen silence to keep peace to the point of forgetting your own feelings? Share your story in the comments. Maybe somewhere out there, someone listening is searching for the same understanding. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss other honest, everyday stories about family, hurt, and the healing journey we all deserve. Because sometimes just one story is enough to make someone feel a little less alone.